I'm Donna Lynn. My book is From Fear to Love, My Private Journey. It was published a year ago, and since then I've had a lot of people writing to me, contacting me, and usually the first thing they say is, please don't think I'm crazy, and they want to tell me about their alien experiences, and I'm just fascinated with that because it validates me and my experiences, plus it gives people a safe outlet to talk about it, because a lot of people don't feel safe talking about these things. So when I was first asked to speak, I did my usual method of getting a journal and putting it next to my bed, getting a pen, and asking, okay, guys, tell me what to say. And the usual method is that they wake me up around 3 a.m. and I start writing, and I write sometimes just words or paragraphs. And in the morning, I may or may not remember what I wrote in the night, but after about 2 or 3 weeks, it comes together into a nice coherent story or message. But this time, it started in December. I got nothing. January came and went. February came and went. March started up, and I was standing in my kitchen one day and starting to panic because this is happening in April. And I said, why am I not getting any messages? And I immediately heard this very distinctive male voice in my right ear. And I know that to be Croat, who is my main alien guide. And he said, we do not yet know who will be in attendance. So here I'm thinking basic human things like, what am I going to wear? And the aliens have such a different agenda. They're thinking they need to gear their messages depending on who's going to be hearing them and who's going to be listening. And they made it very clear that they see everyone as an individual. We, or at least me, I tend to think that the aliens look at us like we look at an anthill or an ant farm. For the longest time, I thought we were an ant farm for the aliens, but they've made it clear that we're absolutely not, that we are individuals. They know us and recognize us each as individuals. And that's why they were waiting to see who would be listening to this message before they told me. And then shortly after that, I started waking up at 3 a.m., writing down little notes. And sure enough, I put together things to talk about that made sense, and they were geared for specific people to listen to, I'm sure. The aliens, they've always approached us, well, for many years, they approach us in a really frightening way. The stories are out there. They did it to me. You're laying in your safe, warm bed, and all of a sudden you're jolted awake, and these big black eyes are staring at you, and this face very close to your face, and you would actually be nose to nose, except they don't have a nose. It's just pretty creepy and scary, and you're just so scared that all you can do is scream. You can't even find words to talk. And I did that for many years, and I know that's happened to many other people. But over the years, they've learned from us as we've learned from them, and they learned to approach us in a more friendly way. So now, as they approach people, they try to do it in a nicer way. And one example is a lady from Germany has written to me after she read my book, and she said that she was approached by aliens when she was a little girl, but they terrified her. So she said, go away, leave me alone. I don't ever want to see you again. But now, later years, she's understanding that they might have been friendly after all, and she'd like to give it another shot. And so she invited them back, and a little bit afraid they might be angry, they might retaliate or something, but that's really not what they do. They're just all about love and compassion, forgiveness and acceptance. They don't have revenge like humans do. They don't even think that way. So if that's happened to you, and as a child, and you told them to go away and they did go away, but now you're thinking you'd like them back, all you need to do is ask, because we have free will. And they'll more than likely be happy to come back and be friendly about it. And that's what they did with her. They kind of told her, they notify you telepathically if they're going to come visit. And so she woke up in the middle of the night, and there were 3 gray aliens in her bedroom. And just as she started to panic, one of them stepped forward and transformed into Shirley Temple, which made her laugh, kind of stopped her from panicking. And they actually held hands, and she said the alien felt very soft, and they exchanged messages a little bit. And then the alien stepped back and became a gray alien, and then the 3 of them disappeared. The whole experience was very pleasant and actually fun for her. And that's such a change from how it used to be in the 60s and 70s when they just came and terrified everyone. And it shows also how they individualize their contacts, because this lady obviously likes Shirley Temple and sees that as a pleasant, fun, happy thing. Whereas me, I'm not a big Shirley Temple fan, so they have never approached me looking like Shirley Temple. I like animals. They come to me looking like a deer or an owl or a dog sometimes. So they individualize the approach to each person, which is very nice. And they are now telling me that they have extended an invitation, that they really, really want to connect with more and more people. And they like to do it individually, one-on-one, because you know how groups are. Groups of humans, you get together, get violent, get rowdy, start fires. They know it wouldn't be a good deal if they came in as a group visitation. So unless it's a small group, maybe of people who meditate or channel or something, they might approach them. But other than that, they feel more comfortable meeting us one-on-one at this time. And because people have free will, you have to ask. They won't just come in on you. And they've reached a lot of people like me who are more the sensitive, emotional, empathic kind. And we've pretty much done all we can as far as saying they're friendly, they want to help. So now they'd like to reach more the left brain people who are like scientists, researchers, doctors, because they do have technology they want to share with us. And they could download blueprints to me for a free energy machine, and it's not going to help a whole lot because I don't have an engineering background, or I wouldn't know how to translate that real well. But they really would like to work with people who are more logical minded, who would understand maybe blueprints that they could send to them in dreams or visions. But right now it's set up so that people with the scientific, logical type minds don't want to believe in the aliens. So that right now that's the mission, is to kind of bridge that gap and maybe get people like me to work with scientific people, or just for those people to open up more and maybe be more accepting of the idea that maybe the aliens are going to drop suggestions or ideas down into the mass consciousness, and they can take that and take advantage of it. Because that is one of the big messages from the aliens. They care about the earth. They're caretakers of the earth. And humanity, we're caretakers of the earth. Originally, the Garden of Eden was the whole planet Earth, and we haven't done a really good job of taking care of it. So they want to help with that. And we can't just, there's a lot of people who think that one day we'll all just get swept up into a spaceship and we'll just hang out there while the aliens come and clean up the earth. But that's just not how it works. You know, we made the mess. We're here to clean it up. We're here to do the work. And that's kind of like a teenager laying on their bed playing a video game and expecting mom to come in and do the laundry and vacuuming. It doesn't work that way. We're here. We have to be the ones to do it, but they will help. As far as approaching people, they're trying to be less threatening, trying to be less intimidating. And they've learned that we give each other gifts. When we care about someone, we like to give gifts. We like to receive gifts. And so they've kind of taken a step further, and now they present us with gifts sometimes. And that's also a confirmation that they're real. And the first time that I was aware, what I found was a gift from the aliens. My dog actually was pretty instrumental in helping me find some of them. I think the dogs work with the aliens because I've always had dogs, and I've always wanted a dog to sleep on the bed with me. And I think it was kind of a subconscious thing to be protected from these nighttime visitors, but the dogs never bark at them. The dogs never growl. And why is that? And they're very protective. You know, you'd think they would protect me when the aliens come. And also dogs are a really good judge of character. And if my dog likes somebody, then they're probably okay. So that helped me to accept that the aliens are good guys, because my dogs never barked at them. And so my dog, I would take him for walks, and we were crossing the street one day, and he stopped at this silver shiny object in the middle of the road, and he would not move. And I'm like, let's get out of the road. And finally, so I picked up this silver object and crossed the street and looked at it. And it was a little silver ingot that said, "Inspire." And that was right about the time I was starting to think, maybe I should write a book about my experiences to help other people who are going through this. And that would inspire people. And also when you pick, there's certain objects, when you pick them up, you can kind of get a sense, get a feeling from them. And I got a sense that that was put there for me. And it's kind of old looking. It was in the street. It had been run over a few times. And that was at a time in my life I was struggling. I had just had surgery and I wasn't feeling my best, and I kind of felt run over and drug around by life. And so, they operate on multi-layered levels. So they approach me in many levels that way. In the mid-90s, I lived in Florida, and I would drive back and forth through Tarpon Springs, Florida, to and from work every day. And I passed this big yellow pawn shop that was on a corner, big 2-story building. And I never thought much of it because I don't really shop in pawn shops. But one day I opened up my grandmother's jewelry box, which I used. It was a big wooden beautiful inlaid box that came over with her from Scotland in the early 1900s. And there was this beautiful dolphin, silver dolphin, attached to a nice quartz crystal. And I'd never seen it before. And I asked my daughter, I asked my husband, they'd never seen it. I didn't know where it came from. I didn't think much of it. And I was thinking, I need to find a chain for that. A couple days later, I opened up the jewelry box, and there was this perfect serpentine silver chain. And as I slid the dolphin charm onto the chain, I was just struck with this really strong memory of stopping in that pawn shop in Tarpon Springs, the big tall yellow one, and buying the dolphin crystal. And I had a very clear image of what the store looked like. It was bright and sunny, big windows, and there was this little tiny lady behind the counter who insisted that I take the dolphin crystal. And it was this beautiful jewelry display, glass case, very clear memory. And I didn't think anything of it. And about 3 months later, I got off work early one day. I was driving home past the pawn shop, and I thought, I'm going to go back in there because they had such a nice jewelry selection. And I walked in the door, and it just was such a shock to my reality because that was not the memory. It was this little tiny, more like a classic pawn shop. It was very small, crowded, narrow aisles, dark, bars on the windows. That was not the place I remembered getting that. And so there's no other way to explain and the little lady behind the counter, well, that was probably an alien. So it's odd that things like that happen and kind of confirms it's a way of them bridging realities too. They actually can manifest physical things into our world. For the longest time, I didn't think they could, but these are things that have just appeared. They look old. All of them always look old and worn, which is interesting too. Like they have a history, like maybe they've been passed through other generations or something. About 10 years later, they experience time differently than us because we measure time as we revolve around the sun. They obviously experience time differently. So sometimes it's hard to gauge. Sometimes they come in cycles and they come frequently. Sometimes it's actually a couple of years before I have another experience. But it was 10 years before I got another, what I call gift. It was 2008, and I had since gotten divorced and moved back to Southern California. But I had the same dog, and we went for a walk in a park one day, and he stopped at a particular tree, lifted his leg, and then he wouldn't move. And I was like, come on, let's go. And he kind of just stopped and looked up at me. And I looked at the tree, and on a branch right at my eye level was hanging a plastic rosary, blue plastic on a dirty kind of string. It looked old, and it looked like it had been made by a child maybe. And so I looked around to see if there were children at the park. There was no one there, nobody nearby. And when I touched it, again, I got that feeling that it was placed there just for me. And I knew it was because the night before, I had asked the aliens about spiritual things. I'd been doing some reading, and there are a lot of theories out there that aliens are evil, they're demonic, they're fallen angels. And I was raised Christian. I believe in God, and I didn't want to do anything that was dangerous spiritually or harmful. So I had been a little concerned, and I had asked the aliens, about spiritual matters. Very next day, eye level, my dog takes me to this tree, and there's this rosary. And I remember thinking, well, it's kind of a cheap little plastic rosary, but I accepted it with gratitude. They want to see gratitude. Put it around my neck, slept with it that night. The next day, we went for a walk. My dog took me to the same park, which was unusual. He likes to go on different rounds. And went to the same tree, and there on the same branch at eye level was a very nice necklace with a cross on it. And it was onyx beads with hematite beads, and the cross itself was made of hematite. and it had a nice sterling silver clasp. And so I don't know if they thought I was being ungrateful for the little plastic rosary, or if they just were testing me to see if I recognized the spirit in which it was given and it didn't matter about the dollar value. I never quite know what their motives are, but that was confirmation for me again that spiritually it's okay. And I never did feel threatened or evil or bad things from them. I've always felt love, acceptance, kindness, all the good things that religions teach anyway. And a couple months later, I was crossing the street and I found a little Om symbol, Om, which I think the Buddhists and the Hindus, several other religions use. And I was immediately given the message that they wanted to ensure that they weren't just endorsing Christianity, that they respect all faiths that humans have. And they also told me that that's one of the things that intrigues them about humans is our faith. They know that life on earth is hard. They know that we all struggle a lot. They see it. And they've told me that they really respect the fact that any of us have any kind of faith at all with the kind of world we live in and the things we face day to day. So that was very reassuring to me also. And then another gift that they gave me that was really meaningful was in 2015. I woke up one morning and went in my kitchen, and there was this little copper butterfly laying in the middle of my kitchen floor. And I live alone, and I hadn't had anyone else to my house in a few days. I would have seen it the day before, I thought, and I don't know where it came from. And I picked it up, and again, it looks aged and worn. And when I picked it up, I got the message that that was placed there for me. It was meant for me because I had been recently diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, lupus, and the symbol for lupus is the butterfly because it causes a butterfly-shaped rash on your face when it's flaring. So they presented me with this copper butterfly because I had also been asking, they've helped me with some other health issues. Like after I had surgery, they've come to my bedside and alleviated my pain. And Croat, my big alien praying mantis alien friend, has helped me a lot with migraine headaches over the years to the point that I almost never get them anymore. So I was begging for help with this lupus because I was suffering at the time, really having a hard time with it. And when I picked up that butterfly, it was just made known to me that they're aware, they know the struggle, but at this time, they're not permitted to help. It's something I need to experience in this lifetime for some reason. But I don't like to dwell on just tangible gifts because that's a little superficial, but it confirms that they're real, they pay attention, they're watching. But the most important gifts they give are the intangible things like a sense of spirituality, the knowing that our reality is so much more than what we see day to day. There's so many levels of reality and different realities, different beings that care for us, that really want to work with humanity as brothers and sisters, and they want to walk among us. They're just not really safe to be able to do that right now. And as far as the Greys, a lot of people think that the Greys are mean or bullies, whatever, because they're not real friendly towards us and they paralyze us when they take us places. But as I was getting to know them, as they were getting to know me, they were allowing me to wake up a little more and come out of the paralysis while I was still on board a ship. I was laying on the exam table and I was starting to move around, and a Gray was standing next to me, and I just kind of panicked, thinking there's a Gray right there, and I kind of threw my arm and I threw him against the wall of the ship, and he just felt like a soft, overripe banana wrapped in a silk scarf. He was just soft and mushy. And I felt so bad. And I realized that's why they paralyze us. Humans are big and strong, and we're pretty brutal and violent overall. And they're very delicate and frail. And so they don't do it to be mean or intimidating. They do it for their own self-preservation. Now that I'm older, they seem to be not as physically active with me. And I know part of the abducting and taking on board the ship is their fertility program where they harvest eggs and that. And I know they did that with me when I was younger. And of course, now I'm older, so they don't participate in that with me anymore. And that was never really traumatic for me, though. They never were brutal or hurtful or anything. They were always very respectful and explained what they were doing. And I was actually kind of honored that they chose me to participate in their program. And now, though, well, as soon as I accepted that they were real, they full on started taking me on board the ship, giving me tours, showing me the control rooms, and like they were real proud of what they had done. And then now it's more just messages. It's more telepathic messages. I just get feelings, intuitions, hunches. I don't get like taken away the way I did. And I kind of miss that. It's as traumatizing as it was and as terrifying as it was. And I know they're there when I ask questions. I do get answers, not always immediately, but I'll get either in dreams or messages, intuitions. I'll know it was from them. Actually, last night I was awake in the night, worried about something, and I just felt this calming presence come over me, and I knew it was one of the aliens, probably the one I call Atekana. She's very feminine and nurturing and caring, like a loving grandmother would be, kind of. And I looked at the clock, and it was 3:13, and that's another clue. 3 o'clock, 3:33, 3:13. That's usually a sign that they're nearby. But no, the actual physical, going on board a ship, going to the alien places, like they used to take me to these caves, amazing caves that were like lit. They had underground rivers, and the water itself glowed so much that it lit the cave by the water, and there would be alien children laughing and playing and sliding down these rock water slides. And that was just an amazing place. And I haven't been taken there in many years now. So it's almost like they were pounding me with these messages until I finally sat down, wrote the book, got the message out. I'm talking about it. And now that's what I was meant to do. And now they've moved on. They're working with other people. And for me, I'm more just meant to talk about it and tell other people that it's okay. They're not going to hurt you. They want to help. They want to be a force for good. When I was younger, I know they did like an egg harvesting. It was kind of like a pelvic exam. I guess they tried to make it as comfortable as possible, considering the circumstances. It would be an exam table. Croat, my main alien friend, is a 7-foot-tall praying mantis. And I actually, when I was younger, I called him the doctor. So apparently he's the one who did the procedures, and he would explain things. And he would say, "We're just checking on you." At the time, I was young. I was probably a teenager when they started. So I was paralyzed at the time, and that's when I was still waking up screaming and terrified. Didn't know if it was a dream, didn't know if it was real, but I'd wake up with bruises and nosebleeds. So I had this awful suspicion that this was really happening, but I couldn't really tell anybody because it sounded so crazy. But he was so reassuring and so comforting that it just was okay. It was like I was a part of something so much bigger than me and so much bigger and more meaningful that I should be happy that they chose me or something. And I think I was in my 30s when I had accepted that this was real. This is really going on. They had harvested eggs because I guess they call it a missing pregnancy, where you actually have all the symptoms of pregnancy and then suddenly it's gone. And my husband at the time had had a vasectomy, so I knew I wasn't, but I had all the symptoms and everything, and then suddenly that was gone. And so I am assuming I have children out there somewhere. And when I was in my 30s, they started taking me on tours of the ship sometimes because I was learning not to kick and scream and to ask questions and be more curious about the whole situation. And they took me on a tour once of this room. And at the time, I was convinced it was a warehouse, and it had big jars of pears, 3 jars stacked on top of each other, but giant pears, and they were attached with hoses and tubes. And there was a whooshing sound through this whole warehouse building. I couldn't quite place what it was. It sounded vaguely familiar. But for some reason, they were really proud to show me this, and it seemed very important. And at the time, it's funny because at the time, these things make perfect sense. Oh, giant jars of pears in a warehouse, sure. And then when I woke up the next day and I was writing it down and I was thinking about it, it occurred to me, those weren't pears, those were fetuses. And that whooshing sound was the sound you hear when you're pregnant and they put the Doppler machine on your belly and you can hear the whooshing sound from the umbilical cord and the mother's heartbeat. So those were jars of fetuses. They were very proud to show me. So that was pretty amazing. As far as I know, I've never actually seen hybrid children. Well, actually, maybe I have seen hybrid children because there was one really bizarre, almost embarrassing kind of experience where they took me into a public restroom. An alien, little gray alien, took me by the hand into this public restroom and wanted me to show this little child how to use a toilet and how to flush it and how to properly clean themselves. And I remember thinking that's weird because the child looked about 6 or 7 years old and they should know how by then. But again, after I woke up, it occurred to me, well, aliens, as far as I know, they don't eat the way we do. They don't have digestive systems the way we do. So if they have hybrid children with digestive systems, they don't know how to teach them how to do these things. So they needed a human to come in and teach them. And it just sounds so bizarre when you talk about it. That's why I think the main reason why a lot of people don't even talk about it. It's just so weird. So they are asking us to help in this way, and they're taking good care of these children. As a mother myself, I should be traumatized that I might have a child out there somewhere on some spaceship or with aliens, but I'm not. I'm just very calmly reassured that everything is as it should be. Everything's good and calm. Atekana, the being that I mentioned before, for many, many years I thought she was the ghost of my grandmother. Both my grandmothers passed before I was born. And she is a pure white being, and she's transparent, very gentle, very loving, very nurturing. And she didn't give me her name for the longest time. So I would wake up, she'd come to me usually if I was sick or upset, and she'd sit on my bedside and maybe stroke my hair, stroke my face. And I assumed that's what a grandmother would do. So I just assumed she was a ghost of one of my grandmothers. And one time around 2007, she was sitting on my bedside and she had these pretty little lips that she's never scared me. And all of a sudden she just showed her teeth, these big, huge, scary, evil, pointed white teeth. And I just drew back and I thought, that's not my grandmother. That's an alien. It struck me that's an alien being. And she has the big black eyes, so I should have known. And she quickly closed her mouth. She didn't expect to scare me. She was proud of those teeth. She wanted to show me that she had created them. They don't have digestive systems to the best of my knowledge, so they don't need teeth. So she explained to me, because she didn't realize that I'd have this primal fear of these awful teeth. It's like a primitive reaction that I had. And she told me then that she's a geneticist and she works with the DNA on Earth. And she was so proud that she had created these teeth. She took shark DNA, barracuda DNA, and some other mammal, a bear or a cougar or something, and had made these very impressive teeth and wanted to show me, and not realizing how much it would upset me. But she explained that that's why she's here. That's what she's doing with Earth. And she said most of the team, which I'm assuming is the team that works with me, is involved in DNA, all DNA of Earth, the trees, the plants, as well as humans. And she looked right at me with those big black eyes and said, and we're interested in you for your DNA. That just was a shocker, a big shocker. It's like, what? I'm no different from anyone else. And, but apparently that's one of the reasons that they are following me. And it is supposed to follow certain family lineages. They say that the abductions continue for generations. So I went through 23andMe DNA to try to find out. And the only thing I discovered that I didn't know is that I have Viking blood. I have like 18% Swedish and Danish. I was really excited because I've always been interested in Vikings. And the only other specific DNA that I know I have is Scottish Highlander, MacGregor clan, and they're like a warrior people, and the Vikings are warrior people. So I don't know if they're interested in warrior people or they're aliens. So it might be something totally different about the DNA that they're looking for. I don't really know. But I thought that was pretty fascinating that she explained at least why they're doing this. When they showed me the warehouse of the giant pears, they were extremely proud. So I think they're very proud of their work with the DNA and the genetics. But I don't really know what their end game is, what their final plan or outcome is for, if they're populating another world, if it's for our future. I really don't know. And I can ask all kinds of questions, but they're not very forthcoming with the answers. And often I'll ask a question and they'll say, it is not yet time for you to know. Like maybe eventually they will tell me. But especially with the giant pears, the fetuses, I was very interested in what are they doing with them? Why? Where are they going to take them somewhere? Why did they even show me? But they just were were proud of their work and wanted me to see it. But that was about the extent of the knowledge they'd share with me about that. One evening I was feeling a little down and out and discouraged. You know, life is hard sometimes. And then I was diagnosed with this illness that has no cure. And I've read of other people who have had impact with aliens and they told them to go away, leave them alone. And they did, but they never left me alone, even though I asked them to and I begged them to. And of course, now I look forward to it and now I love them and I love the experience. But when I was younger, I think they traumatized me. And that might partly be why I have an autoimmune disease today, the bodily trauma. And so I was discouraged with life, struggling one night, and I was asking Croat, why me? Why did you guys pick me for this? And if I created my own reality, I certainly wouldn't have created a lifetime of struggle and difficulty. And I went to sleep and Croat came to me and sometimes I believe they take me actually by the body, the whole body to the ship because I'll wake up with bruises and marks. Other times I feel Croat whooshes me up out of my body, like just my spirit or whatever is taken to the astral plane. And I felt that this time. I felt being whooshed out of my body and with Croat by my side, zipping out of the earth into the sky and the stars, like zooming out from Google Earth, exactly like that, until you're just in the blackness with the stars and just hovering there while I caught my breath for a minute. And then he brought me to this place. It was this landmass just floating out in space, not a planet or anything, just a landmass. There was an ocean, there were mountains. It was a fertile green valley, and we came in closer and closer. And as we got closer, I could hear drumming and I could hear people talking, and it was like joyful celebration. And then in the valley, I could see there was this house, this big long, like an old time Viking longhouse, a big wooden house. And on the inside, when we went inside, there were fire pits and torches, just like what you'd picture the Vikings to have a big feast and celebration, a big, huge, heavy wooden table in the middle of the room, laden with platters and goblets and candelabra. And Croat told me this was your pre-birth party. And all the souls in there were celebrating me and this lifetime that I'm experiencing. And I was at the head of a table. I was me, but I wasn't me. I was, I guess, in spirit form. And I had 3 spirit guides with me. And they handed me this big golden platter, and they handed me a set of big golden tongs and guided me towards this big table. And I looked out, and it wasn't food or drink. It was life choices and life experiences. And I was to take the tongs and choose who's going to be my best friend in 3rd grade. Who am I going to marry? Where am I going to live? And this huge table with so many options and so many choices of things on earth for one lifetime. And he told me there are certain things that are set, that are not the free will choices, who my parents were going to be, certain astrological influences. And for this lifetime, alien contact. Lifetime alien contact. I wasn't getting out of it. So it was preset. It was a pre-birth agreement. But I chose a lot of other things, and I went around the table and I chose divorce, and I set the tongs down, and then I went back to choose a second divorce, and my spirit guide kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Don't you think that's a little overwhelming for one lifetime?" And I was so arrogant, and I said, "No, I can handle this. I can handle all this." And I loaded up financial difficulties and chronic illness. And my spirit guide kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Don't you think that's a little bit overwhelming?" And I said, no, I can handle it. I was so arrogant because from out there, looking in on earth life, it's like, I want to experience it all. I want to know everything. And then the spirit guides were kind of rolling their eyes behind my back because they were going to be the ones guiding me through this life and knowing I was going to pass through the veil of forgetting when I'm born and whining and moaning and complaining about how hard my life is when actually I chose it all. I did choose it all. So when people say you create your own reality, I used to not really believe it, but from a higher perspective, from that perspective, I can see where it does make sense. And they also explained it was almost like setting up a game of Monopoly because, we all have free will. Here, you be the banker, you count out the money, I'll buy Park Place. It was kind of like that, setting it up because I made these choices, but I was going to pass through the veil of forgetting, and then I was going to have free will. And everyone else was going to have free will. So you could have chosen that you would marry this certain person, but their parents have the free will. They might have chosen to move off to a different state, and you never met that person, so you never married them. And so it's almost like setting up a game before you're born. And then the players go in and forget what they chose. And the aliens have told me I take things far too seriously. It's just a game. And when it's over, we're all going to get together and laugh about it and reminisce. But while we're in it, it just seems so serious all the time. But it's just, we made certain choices, but then we forgot we made them. And then all of us have free will to choose different things. So it's pretty chaotic, but that's part of the intrigue about living on Earth. It's why so many souls want to come and have an Earth life experience because it's pretty wild. It's a wild game. And so the alien contact was definitely programmed in for me and no getting out of it. And now I'm finally doing what I was supposed to do. It took, 30 years to get just past the fear. And then I started writing notes and believing that this might really be happening, and finally got the book published, and now I'm out talking openly about it. And apparently that was the whole plan all along, just to make it kind of safe. If I can do it, if I can get past the fear and get out there and talk about it, then anybody can. And that's kind of pretty much what my mission was. So, but they do still come and have contact with me, usually if they have messages that they want to bring. But I feel like the bulk of it is kind of in the past, and it's a little sad because I miss the contact. But they do answer questions. If I have really important or pressing concerns, they do answer. They do still come telepathically, if nothing else.